Hi, everyone. It's great to be on this platform today and hosting this very interesting panel discussion on the future of the digital factory solutions. Well, when we look at one thing that pandemic has done, it has accelerated the digital transformation programs for many organizations. And the organizations which are there in the manufacturing sector are no exception to that rule. As per our recent study, we believe that manufacturing technology, IoT, digital factory, and allied areas would add a significant value to the gross domestic product of various countries which are investing heavily in that space. Today, we are fortunate to have our panelists with us, which bring in the perspective from both the technology experts and technology service providers, as well as organizations which are adopting these solutions as they go forward. So without further ado, let me welcome the panelists for today's discussion. So let me first of all request Mr. Jayata Banerjee, who is the Group CIO of Tata Steel, to join us today. A warm welcome, Mr. Banerjee. Glad you could join us today.
Thank you, Shushan.
Thank you. We'll get all the panelists on this platform and hopefully then request each one of the panelists to share a quick introduction about themselves. So let me quickly request Mr. Saibal Roy, who's the National Head for Manufacturing and Distribution, Airtel Business. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you, Shushan.
Thank you. Then let me request Mr. Matthias Linden, Head of Business Engagement and Transformation for Ericsson. Hi.
Hi, thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And then we also have Mr. Thandapani, who is the ex-CIO of TVS and currently advisor to many large organizations, joining us in the panel today.
Hello, I am happy to join you. Very happy.
Thank you so much, esteemed panelists, for giving us your time. And I'm very excited to hear your thoughts and perspectives on how this area is shaping up. Before we go forward, may I request the panelists to quickly introduce themselves and the areas that they are focusing on as of now. Let me start with you, Mr. Banerjee. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shushan. So very happy to be here. So I'm Jayanta Banerjee, Group CIO of Tata Steel Limited. So my responsibilities include IT, the digital transformation, and automation. Automation is the level 3 and the level 2 systems, right? So it is a unique combination of the OT as well as the IT as well as the digital transformation. Primary responsibility is to drive a very large transformation program across Tata Steel globally. So we'll talk about it as Shushan bombards me with all the questions. So.
Thank you. Thanks, Atan. Thank you. Requesting Mr. Roy to please introduce himself.
Thank you, Shushan. It's a privilege to be here with such eminent panelists. So, in fact, I have been in this particular trade for the last 25 plus years now, perhaps working with various service providers and with Airtel for the last 9 years. My role is to, manifest more into manufacturing and distribution and get into various technologies. How do we drive it further for the Airtel's growth, as well as for our esteemed customers like Jointo to use all across the entire CIOs, as well as the CXOs and the production, our fellow colleagues, are most important customers for us, and we'd like to proliferate there.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks you could join us. Mr. Thandapani, your views, please.
Hello, I'm happy to be here. I retired as Chief Information Officer of TVS Motor Group in the year 2017. Since then, I have been practicing as a consultant for digital transformation. I'm consulting some corporates and also acting as independent director in some companies.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And to Mr. Matthias Linden.
I bring 15 years of globe-trotting the world, building a resilient global supply chain And I must say that over my years of experience, I've never seen such an exciting paradigm now as we are in now, introducing the fourth industrial revolution and technology to the supply chains and enabling new things. So these experiences and these visions I will share with this panel debate as well. I'm happy to be here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. If I was listening to this podcast, I'll be super excited because it's not often that you can get experience from all sides of the spectrum, from solution providers, from practitioners who are currently looking at it, and for practitioners who have run that agenda successfully for many large organizations, all to be on one stage. So thank you so much. We'll get this started maybe with the first question to Mr. Roy. When we look at the digital factory solutions, there are multiple layers in that. And of course, we understand that Airtel Business has done a lot of innovation in some of those layers. If you would like to share some perspective on what is the field of play over there and your thoughts on the innovation in that area.
So to tell you frankly, in fact, digitally, in fact, what Airtel is all about is with the synonymous on the street, the guy on the street would understand is mobility. But in the enterprise space, it is much more beyond. It is connectivity and much more beyond what we do. And in the digital factory transformation, it is not only driven by optimization and cost control, but advances in connectivity, big data, and the expansion of the Internet of Things, which has opened the doors for a breed of intelligent manufacturing technology. So this is the most important avenue, perhaps, if we see how do we, in fact, proliferate from the technology which is available and, in fact, get the benefits to our varied customers and users as such. Today, average cost of a sensor is perhaps 200% lesser what it used to be in 2010. Global IoT market is going to touch perhaps $1 trillion, if I may say. And with this particular advent, obviously the digitization is the biggest thing which we see. Even during pandemic times, we have seen 60%. I mean, I'll give you some data points which is there. 67% manufacturers accelerated digital platform. Then, in fact, also on the ROI, which I may talk about, the digital manufacturing reduced machine downtime by 50%. So all this can be only done when you have a seamless connectivity available all across. So what we perhaps can do in a digital factory today is that we have spectrum available, and with the spectrum, we can give you private LTE solutions, which is available all across today in various areas. So it's something like we cull out the spectrum and we offer that as a service. In fact, what will actually happen is today, when you have to get connected and perhaps you have to do all these connectivity and perhaps a connected SMT line or a connected line has to work. It has to get, how do you do that? How do you do that connectivity? It has to be done seamlessly. Classically speaking, people do it with industrial Wi-Fi. But with the private LTE coming, what actually happens is we would be able to give you a seamless connectivity all across within that space and that particular premises. We cull out the spectrum in that particular area, which is a private spectrum for that enterprise, and that space could be, enough and more for a complete factory premises to work on. And actually, it proliferates, in fact, the entire manufacturing process to go completely humanless. And where would be, obviously, there would be a lot of technologies which we would be using over and above this, which would be the cloud. You would be having robotics. You would be having AIM, and all that intertwined with the seamless connectivity will give you the benefit to the user, have a complete connected platform together. In fact, that will reduce the, the wastage. There are a lot of applications of that. There are so many technologies which have come in of digital twins as such. So all these things will definitely take it into a different cognizance at a different level altogether. The production efficiency grows much more higher. If I may say, the statistics are such interesting facts that, in fact, then the sky is the limit now. That's what I can see in the particular digital manufacturing space. 2026, it is estimated this market would rise to $746 billion. Look at that. Look at the number which is coming out. And the CAGR growth, which is talked about, is 19.8%. These are all hard statistics which definitely nobody can deter away. And I think we are in India, we are at the cusp of getting into a much, much bigger strides with this technology being available.
Thank you. Thank you. And I absolutely share that enthusiasm and optimism about India being the future market where you should be. And that brings me to Matthias. You have seen this transformation elsewhere. And Ericsson has been a partner to many organizations globally on the digital factory journey. So can you share some examples of how your clients have benefited from the digital factory solutions?
Yes, I'm happy to share. It may be expected of me representing Ericsson on this call that I would, pitch a lot of our products, building the technology in the back end, but I will stay away from that, at least for a second, and focus on how we drink our own champagne. Because we are a strong believer of the Industry 4.0, but we also practice that. As being a technology company, we have a benefit serving our customers close geographically. We want to produce, industrialize, and deliver our products and technology close to customers. Hence, our portfolio evolves very rapidly. Therefore, we have presence in India, in many countries close to our key customers, splitting up, having smaller units than what we would have had, having a central production that was probably the recipe of the past. In order to cope with that, we apply Industry 4.0, the new paradigm of things. So what we say strategically is that automation enables us to run smaller units and afford doing so, while data connecting, sharing, cross-sharing the data lakes across units will enable to keep the scale of things. So that's how we can cope with this new resilient dual production strategy of ours. Going into pure examples of whether this is a nice pitch or reality, our latest greenfield addition to our site landscape is our investments in the US, where we have a USA 5G smart factory, as we call it, which is recognized by the World Economic Forum being a lighthouse. And I think there are more callers on this line having lighthouses represented. But even in early phase, being evaluated whether we were accepted to be a lighthouse, North Star of technology or not, we actually showed results being more than twice as effective than other normal factories. Looking at the people labor intensity, having only a fourth of lead time throughput in the lines and running with less than half of the capital. And that was only early phase. And that we have achieved by these elements of automation, data, and it constantly evolves. It's not a set of use cases applied and then you're done. It constantly evolves. So it was just an early indication that it's true. It's not only a vision. I paused there for a second, but it's super exciting.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. That example of your US 5G smart factory being the lighthouse, that's really impressive. And I assume this is something which is greenfield. So you have pretty much built digital into the factory itself as it was getting built. So that's quite interesting to hear.
Right.
Would you like to add?
And to point out, hence, scale is reached across all our units, even the brownfield developments. It's the same stack, it's the same data lakes. It's being built globally as we speak so that we can leverage scale across units as well. But the greenfield was a specific investment with this factory in the US, for sure.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that. And let me switch gears and now come to some of the specific sectors that we thought would be probably the early adopters of digital factory. And when we talk about that, automotive comes to our mind. And that's where I'll request thoughts from Mr. Thandapani. As you have seen, auto sector very closely over many, many years. And auto sector has been one of the enthusiastic adopter of digital and digitization. What are the themes that you would want to bring out or share with the audience today from a digital factory solutions perspective?
Sure. Thank you. See, as you rightly put it, automotive sector has been the pioneer in adopting many technologies, be it ERP, be it PLM, or customer relationship management, or everything of that sort. And coming to this digital manufacturing, they have been adopting it for quite some time, even about 20 years back, and SCADA systems and other things being there. We have been capturing the information from the factory for the betterment of factory, mainly for maintenance and other activities. Recent past, in last about I can say about 5 to 8 years, we have been concentrating on more on automation of processes, how you can automate the processes such that you gain some productivity gains, like self-guided vehicles and something similar to that one. Then what is very important is the process control. How do you capture the process parameters into the top operations, and those parameters can be used for business analytics and data lakes and other things, what Matthias has also mentioned about it. I'll be also discussing about that one sometime later, mainly for process control, to ensure that the product is the moment it comes out of the line, it can be directly dispatched, okay, without any testing and other things. To give the assurance, we built in a lot of process controls. And the third one is the traceability. The traceability we concentrated on for many reasons. Number one, you will even do a lot of analysis, so why the part has failed, why it has failed, where it has failed, and how it has failed, and many reasons. It will collect more information. Commercially, it also helped claim back-to-back warranty from the suppliers, such that you also bring the suppliers ecosystem into our business also. So it helps us in bringing that traceability. Nowadays it has become a compliance issue as well as. And the fourth aspect of it is in EHS, that is environment, health, and safety. We brought a lot of IoT and Industry 4.0 principles, such that those compliance matters are all automated, and you also have a perfect control over the discharge of any emissions and other things. For those things we also addressed, and we started using these principles in those areas. These are all the four areas, to put it in summary, that process automation, process control, traceability, and EHS. These are all the main areas. Within the factory we used it. Of course, we also used it outside the factory, where you can even see the performance of the vehicles on the road. Okay, that's outside the factory we used it.
Thanks for sharing that perspective. And sometimes people joke that automobiles today are pretty much computer on wheels. So if the end product is so digitized, then the process has to be digitized as well.
Correct. Yeah.
So now shifting gears to a different industry, and here I'll request thoughts from Mr. Banerjee. When we talk about Tata Group overall, it's always at the forefront of digital technology adoption, and we have seen the same for Tata Steel, and a lot of use cases built within Tata Steel. So for the audience which is there and who's starting up on this journey, would you like to share your thoughts on some of the interventions which have got good traction and business value addition?
Yeah, thanks, Sushant. So, yeah, Tata Steel has always been in the kind of forefront of adopting technology, even though we will label the steel manufacturing as a pretty conservative sector, right? But still, that is true, and it is also comes out from the fact that, as Matthias also mentioned, so we are proud to say that we are one of the steel manufacturing company, we are having the largest number of sites. We have been accredited with the World Economic Forum Global Lighthouse. So whether it is our European operations in IMODEN, whether it is our Kalinganagar plant, which is more as a relatively newer plant, and whether it is Jamshedpur, which is a 110-year-old operation, we have 3 lighthouses under our belt on the Industry 4.0. Specifically coming to intervention, see how we started this transformation journey. We took a North Star, and we started this journey around in 2015 with the strategy roadmap in Tata Steel that we want to become a leader in steel industry adopting digital technologies. That's a part of our overall strategy roadmap, which we call the strategic enabler number 2, along with other enablers. Then, an offspring from that, we created gave ourselves a mission statement that is create a $2 billion EBITDA improvement in a span of 4 to 5 years. That's substantial, 14,000 to 15,000 crores coming only from digital intervention. So that gave us a North Star. Right? And it is not to be mixed with the process innovations and the process interventions. It is going to be adding to the process innovations and interventions, the digital intervention. Then if you have to single out one particular intervention, it will be very difficult to say, because what we have done as a strategy, we said that we will create a dose of digital in every part of the value chain, whether we start from raw materials to finished goods to customer. Every aspect of the value chain has to be digitally enabled. Now, if you look at the World Economic Forum Global Lighthouse in Jamshedpur, so they also looked at the entire value chain. They looked at almost 860 use cases or models that are running today to optimize or create value in the operation. They selected 5 out of that, right? So if you look at a digital intervention strategy, what we essentially looked at is we created a 7-layer architecture, and it goes back to the point that Saibal mentioned. And my firm belief is that you should not build a car unless you have built a road, right? So fundamentally, sometimes when it comes to digital intervention or digital strategy, people overlook the core infrastructure. And that is where things go wrong. So my advice would be that Saibal mentioned, the first focus on the infra layer, even if it doesn't give you returns, because it will take some time to get the returns, the ROI. So you focus on the connectivity and look at the steel industry. There are remote areas, we have mines, so they're in remote villages, forest lands and all that. It is difficult. It is extremely challenging terrain. So focus on the connectivity, put the upfront investment, focus on cybersecurity, extremely important because you are putting data in motion. You are talking about, Saibal talked about sensors, Matthias also talked about sensors. And so as soon as you put the data in motion, you increase the vulnerability, you increase the exposure. So cybersecurity will be an upfront investment, and cloud. And cloud should not be driven from a technology perspective, from a business case perspective. Are you becoming more agile? Are you able to do work from anywhere, right? That is the kind of platform aspect we should take. So we made those investments in the first few years of the transformation. Then we built the sensorization layer, and I can talk about it more in subsequent phases. And then you create a data layer. And that is most important. Once you have a single version of truth, and that's the major intervention. And that is where your analytics and your AI and the visualization renders much value to the business. So the whole transformation intervention that we have taken is a business-led transformation, digitally enabled, which is business KPI-led. So we look at yield, energy, throughput, quality, look at predictability, reliability, look at every business parameter. And if the needle is not moving because of digital intervention, then there is no point in making that intervention. So the business has to ultimately be profiting, right, at a use case by use case basis, and follow a very stringent Deming process, D0 to D5, from ideation to validation to business case to implementation to cash in bank, that is accrual. That's the kind of strategy we follow. It's a process that we follow at every step across the value chain. And that is how the intervention is running. So right now, the future focus is to, in a highly physical steel industry, can we move work from on-site to off-site? Now, COVID, as Saibal also mentioned, it accelerated the transformation. So it was a seamless transition of Tata Steel being a steel industry. When March 23rd or 24th last year, we went into lockdown, it was just seamless. Everybody started working from home, right? We could manage the footfall remotely by use of IoT-based technologies that I can talk about more. So we have many connected platforms, but fundamentally creating that data, single version of truth, and rendering the insights and intelligence at the consumption layer. That's the fundamental strategy, but we'll talk about it more as the session goes. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Mr. Banerjee, for sharing those thoughts. I'm sure there are many in the audience today who are just starting on that journey. And the fact that there is a large value that you have been able to realize, and you spoke about almost 14 to 15,000 crores. That's a substantial value on the table. So for those who are still sitting on the fence, digital is not a fad, it's real business value. That's first. And second...
Yeah, so Sushant, just to correct, it has not been realized yet, all of it. It is midway. It is midway, so it is a journey. So that's the target. But yeah, substantial amount has already been realized and substantial amount is yet to be realized. So the journey is still on. Yeah.
Perfect. No, but that I would say overall target value is quite impressive, and that's pretty much almost like close to two to 2.2 billion dollars being added to the bottom line. That's quite scalable. The other key takeaway I would have from this is, of course, building the road first, which is build that data architecture, integration, and make sure that when your use cases come in, they are able to run and they are able to create value. So that's very well put. So we spoke about the two industries here. We spoke about auto, which is in one edge of the spectrum, and we spoke about core manufacturing and metals and related areas. Let me now request thoughts from Mr. Roy. You have been looking into this area for quite some time, and you have a view across industry. So if you can share your thoughts in terms of what is the degree of adoption across various industry segments, and if you can share your thoughts on how that is panning out in the future.
Frankly, I think the biggest catalyst of this entire adoption has been the COVID. And needless to say, everybody started looking at digitization extremely, very, very strongly. I mean, we never had situations like we were doing video conferencing so easily. Let's look at that. It's become so simple now, right? Initially, everybody wanted to have a meeting in person. Now we are so happy doing meetings like this, and we are making things happen. And to tell you frankly, it is also ease of doing business. The quotient has increased drastically, right? So for that particular thing to proliferate and get into the basics of it is touching every industry today. None of the industries, I would say, is absolved of this, because you cannot. Otherwise, you will become, finished. You will be obsolete. You can't get into. You have to look at the particular piece immediately. So in that context, if I may say, I am seeing definitely there are steps which are being taken, but it is not perhaps to that extent what it should be. Maybe it has to. It is maybe early days, and it is still in the concept stage. People have to understand it better. What Joyanto talked about is that firstly the infra layer. People have to understand what is the importance of this infra layer, because ultimately there is a cost involved, there is a ROI involved, but the benefits are huge. It will not happen immediately, but it will happen. And the benefits would be, you will be getting such a big benefits, like you will not able to realize that what it is today. Today, if I may see, maybe we can see it from the Western world, what people have done. There are, what Matthias talked about is the 5G factory, which he talked about. We, in fact, in India also have got a 4G private LTE factory. Let me tell you, it is running, Mr. Dandapani, near your place in Chennai. And that's a completely factory, which is production. Production is it's an SMT line factory. And it has got what we have created in that, and I'll just take you through that. What is actually happening is we've got small cells which has been deployed, and classically speaking, there should have been 56 APs would have been connected at that particular place. 56 APs have gone away. It is just 2 small cells. It is covering the entire factory. The factory distance is around 140,000 square meters. That's the size. And what is actually happening, you've got a seamless network available. With this seamless network available, you can do access control. You can do remote operations and monitoring. I'm just taking you the facades of what the production line would look at. You can have connected mobility. Now, for connected mobility, what Mr. Dandapani talked about in the automobile perspective is AGVs and AIVs. That's where it is. The connected mobility is there. So if I may say AGV, it can work with a Wi-Fi, but it is again on a path which is like, it is straightforward. It is a created path which is already there. But with an AIV, the path can be monitored as per the situation may be. And with an AIV coming into being, AIV needs that particular piece of seamless connectivity, which is the most important piece here. With the private LTE coming in, and then a combination of RFID tags, you can have stops over the stations. So that is another perspective which comes into being. Then we have training and skilling. Now, from a factory perspective, what is the training and skilling which we talk about? You have AR and VR in that. Now, for that AR, VR also to run, the connectivity is extremely important. Then finally, asset tracking, digital asset tracking, extremely important. Now, this has all been incorporated in this factory. And I'm just giving you an example of this factory. Why? because it has given benefits of 31% labor time has reduced. 31,000 man hours has reduced. Look at that. That was a wastage which used to be there. So with all this particular thing, because when I talk about access control, there's a thermal sensor based temperature control which is being done. Thermal sensor based, in fact, you are looking at distance between people also because of these pandemic issues. So everything has been taken into cognizance. So there are people, there are industries which have started accepting, there are many organizations which have started accepting, but they are perhaps trudging that path. I am seeing a lot of proliferation because when I've been talking to various organizations and various CIOs, perhaps they understand the importance of this. I see a lot of proliferation on IoT, but these are in parts, right? On an overall perspective, I think what Mr. Dandapani and Jayanta talked about, the complete process automation and the process control being put together. There is a journey, and we have to look at this particular from a journey standpoint. I'm super excited because I'm sure this is the next thing of evolution which is going to be there. This is the next growth phase which is going to be there because there is enough and more to be done here. I would say we are just perhaps it is just we're touching the canvas is just we have just brushed with one particular flare only. We've got a lot many colors to get into this particular canvas, and I'm sure a lot of industries are coming in. Today, if I talk about connected perspectives and connected, devices, that's also another particular metric and thermometer to look at what is the proliferation of digitization which is happening. You see POS machines all across the place. You will see POS machines which are now connected, right? And it is making life much more easier. So digitization is definitely on the anvil, and it is going to definitely rise. And today, Airtel, I can proudly say that we've been the leaders, at least from a connected number of devices in the country today. So there is enough and more to be done, and the technology is available. The good part is the technology is available, and I obviously understand that this technology, adoption does take time. It is a journey, but there are leaders in the industry who have started, who have adopted. I mean, Tata Steel is definitely one of the leaders who have done it, and there are many more who are starting to do that. So we will definitely, we will take the help of our leaders to make this proliferation happen. And it would be one of the integration of IT and OT, because IT and OT never used to talk earlier. It were two different lines which were completely, absorbed of themselves. But today, IT OT is completely integrated. That is the beauty of digital technology, a digital factory, if I may say. I'm really super excited. I'm sure this entire forum is also super excited about this, and definitely we'll talk further on this.
No, we share that enthusiasm, man. The point that you mentioned, it's pretty much all pervasive. So, there could be some segments slightly ahead, some segments slightly behind, but the direction is all clear. We are all marching towards digital factory future. So that's quite heartening to hear. So while we are doing that, and there's a demand which is coming in from the market, would request thoughts from Matthias in terms of supply. So supply in the sense, when we're looking at implementing digital factories at that scale, there are questions which come in around saying, what about my scalability? What about latency? What about throughput? What about reliability? And so many different questions come in, because now you're not just monitoring, but in many cases, these are closed loop systems. You're actually taking action which will impact the production flow itself. So how's the technology companies responding to that?
Yeah, I will actually look back to previous speakers building up an answer to this question, right? It's start building the road. One of our speakers talked about, and also Mr. Roy is talking about this is building gradually, and it's been added. The business values is extracted gradually and will continue. I think it's about choosing a scalable platform. That's the key thing from the beginning. As for us, we invested in a 4G and 5G private network connected industry IoT platform with cloud capabilities and a strong edge compute capability. What does it mean for an a non-techie person? I mean, it means that I have the basic features, in my case, state of the art, for me to actually deploy any use case I might have in mind to what technology today cope with. When technology evolves, I will simply increase the spectrum of what use case I can put on. If I take my use cases, to be honest with you, some of them require 5G, minutes latency, and so forth to perform well. Some of them have enhanced functionality adding 5G. A simple, very hands-on example is the AGVs, as you were alluding to before. When we took them from 4G to 5G, they were running a lot faster because they could communicate with less latency, and therefore, even though operated through the edge, they can actually move faster in the factory. So it's very hands-on, but it's a small step for mankind kind of feeling, but it's a good example to do that. So, and some of our use cases, they are simply about data. Maybe latency is not so important. The important thing for us is that in order us to get our money back, to extract business values, it's not about deploying one use case on this investment. It's to stack a lot of number of use cases. And this journey, then we are down into empowering agile teams to solve real problems. It's not about taking an AGV and you look at it and you think about how can this improve my productivity. It's more on how can I speed up my internal logistics to lose waste of inefficient machinery and decrease my inventory. Well, maybe I need a connected AGV. It's business driven and it's empowered through agile teams. And these guys, they don't go away. They will add on use cases, maybe coming up to the 840 mentioned by Janaita previously here. That's the thing. That's how you leverage the investment. And think about it. Investing in your state-of-the-art platform that is scalable, the first use case you put on maybe cost some money, for sure. But when you have enabled the agile deployment, and when you're adding on your use case number 841, it will probably come to no cost for you. The marginal cost is very little. You probably have already plumbed your data. The data is there. You can just apply your idea directly into live use case. That's the beauty of this. And I think that's where we have, as leaders, have a responsibility to get this over the threshold and not focus on the golden use case or the one use case that will motivate to take investment. By the road, then the use cases will come over time, and that will definitely pay your investment. I see my colleagues here are nodding. I like that.
If I may add on to Matthias, in fact, this is something like analogous to a service provisioning. And I have been in this service provider for so many years. The more the number of subscribers keep coming, we in fact reduce our costs. That's the way it is, right? So use cases, it will keep on adding. It is just taking the first step, because you have to create a highway for the cars to follow. If the cars have to come on the road, the highway has to be created first. And that is important. That's the first step which somebody has to take in that particular respective industry or in that particular organization. But once you do it, then, as I said in my first discussion, sky is the limit. You have N number of use cases. You can have paradigm shifts like, in fact, right from production. What is the use case? Perhaps what is the benefit you can drive out of it? Even you can look at energy efficiencies. There are areas where you can perhaps keep on, improving. Then it is just like whatever you spend for the highway, it's a forgotten chapter at a given point of time. That's the way it would be. Because if I see from a finance angle, because everybody would present start perspective would be, what is ROI? What is my ROI? If I go back, and that's the analogy which I'm saying, when we started off mobile operations in India, we were 16 rupees a minute. That was the charge. Look at where we are today. So this is just the analogous which I'm trying to say. I hope you understand it.
Yep, absolutely. No, absolutely. I completely agree. And it's usually when we get onto panels, it's not easy to get everybody to converge. But I'm seeing that theme come in again and again, which is certain elements of digital factory, especially around the core connectivity, edge, data, that is like foundational. They are table stakes. So you have to have that in the mix. And as Mr. Linden was saying, by the time you get to the use case number N, the marginal cost would be so low, it will actually give you much more power to innovate, experiment, build more use cases, and the magic will start happening over there. So that's absolutely well understood. So while we have spoken a lot about technology, siliconware side of things, let's talk a bit about the carbonware, people like you and me. Mr. Dandapani, you have actually led a lot of projects on digital factory and allied areas in your previous avatar. Tell us a little bit about the challenges that get faced. So in terms of adoption, in terms of simple culture, in terms of any other themes which stand between these initiatives and they realizing the ROI that you intended.
Sure. Mr. Roy has touched a very good point that COVID has really brought the breakthrough in the digitization of everything. Okay, of course, it has done, but as far as the manufacturing is concerned, the journey started much earlier. I can say even a decade back, in the sense that what happened, in manufacturing, if you look at the larger industrial houses in India, most of the manufacturing industrial houses are at least 50 years old. 50 years old would have been started somewhere in the mid 60s or mid 70s, and they are about 60 years old, and the employees are also nearly about aging for retirement. The hardcore workers, hardcore technicians, they are all aging and they are all retiring. There are certain technicians, whom I know. I have also run a pressure die casting foundry, and I have associated with the die casting also. From the sound of the die casting, he will say whether the shot will be right or not. That type of knowledge, patent knowledge, he used to have. Some of the mechanics, they'll be hearing the sound of the machine, the motor. He will say whether the bearing will be worn out or not. Okay. But he developed this knowledge over a period of 25, 30 years. And he is in a position to very clearly say what is working and what is not working. But that knowledge, if that need to be imparted to the millennials, the new workers, you have to bring some science to that one. Otherwise, he will think that it is only a thumb rule. Bringing that science, this IoT and the Industry 4.0 helped the manufacturing industry a lot. So you capture all the process parameters, you validate all those process parameters, and you bring a science why that shot is perfect and why the motor is warning out. You bring a science to that one. In that way, it is very much helpful for manufacturing industry to bring why you need to collect the data at that particular point of time, such that you are in a position to very clearly explain why the things are happening in that particular way. That is the greatest thirst for the manufacturing industry. I mean, they see that multiple products are coming, okay, one after another. You produce the first model, second model, third model, depending upon that one, your demand for manufacturing in manufacturing, you change the model in the production line. When the production lines are changing, you have to also change the nut runner accordingly. Okay, the torque that you are using it, the way in which you are manufacturing, the way in which you are the rotation at which RPM at which the nut runner need to work, all those things need to be changed on the fly. These are all the things which has created lot of thirst for adopting Industry 4.0 and going for more and more digitization. And there are certain benefits also. We use a lot of robotics in the paint shop, but the way in which it has to move according to the component which are to be painted, okay, that need to be directed to the robo on the fly. So all those things are all possible only when you go in for this type of systems. Coming to the challenges, having said that most of the large industrial houses are about 50, 60 years old, they'll be having different generations of machines. Some machines are all very old, about 40 years, 50 years old, but still robust, giving the productivity. But if they need to be connected and they need to be digitized, there will be a lot of challenges on that one. And the people, okay, the conversion, the people know, they know, they know very clearly. They will say the way in which it has to be happen. But give the science to that one and make the younger generation to understand and adopt it. This is one of the major challenges what we are facing it. And we have multiple technology in the shop floor. Okay, any digital any factory, which is manufacturing either automotive or Tata Steel or any other thing, it's like a steel jungle. Actually, in that steel jungle, how to enable all this Wi-Fi and RFID readers to work, that is another major challenges which we have got to overcome. These are all the things, by doing design of experiments over a period of time, we have matured it. There is no single silver bullet which will address everything unless you build a new factory, taking all those things into consideration. These are all my submissions on the challenges.
Yeah, so
You are
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. There's no silver bullet, absolutely, and there would always be challenges that need to be overcome. But the one which will probably stay with me is the element around millennial workers, and as they are entering the factory floors today, and they have grown up with a completely different set of expectations. How do you manage them? How do you bring together the entire technology stack, which is intuitive to them? Because in their personal side, for example, they are all using smartphones and they see completely different view of technology. So that is,
correct.
I think, fairly well understood.
They want
and from
the
here,
ERP should also run like a Google. Okay.
but probably that's the expectation, right? I mean, if that gets the adoption faster and brings me to the ROI, possibly that is where things will go.
That drives the current technocrats today.
And it makes it harder actually to manage technology. In fact, that was the point I wanted to pick up with Mr. Banerjee. You mentioned about 860 use cases, and they are across, I'm sure, multitude of technologies as well as platforms and so on and so forth. It's a very complex landscape to manage and govern, and especially with these component itself they're changing. So you probably were on cloud, and then there is innovation that happens. You are using particular kind of edge solution, then something happens. So it's a constantly evolving landscape. How do you manage something like that?
The interesting question, and what I would like to kind of reflect upon is all the points that have been made. Let me also illustrate with some examples. But to address your question directly, I would say that though I'm a technologist by profession and by training, right? I have been in Tata Consultancy Services for 25 years of my career, and then in Tata Steel in this role. I would say technology is least of the worry. It works, and we should not get into this experimentation and proof of concept and proof of value more than that is needed and warranted for. Sometimes you have to do it, but you should not do it just as a practice. Instead, we should focus on not putting the cart before the horse, but looking at identifying business use cases, business problems. That is where your maximum effort should go in identification of what are the business challenges, business problems across the value chain, be it in any industry, whether it is motors, whether it is steel, whether it is retail. Identify the problems across the value chain, and then see what can be a potential solution. So, what if I can give some illustrative examples? What we started off and how it paid off, and how COVID accelerated, and it will demonstrate many of the points that have been spoken about. We started with a business problem that in Tata Steel, and the demography is a little different than what Mr. Dandapani talked about, millennials and technocrats. But if you come to Tata Steel, there are a lot of the workforce who will not be technocrats or who will not be carrying smartphones, right? The daily workmen who are coming into our plants and operating the machines. And that number is huge. And then there is a segment of officers and executives and all. The point is that it's a question of safety. The question came that how many people in real time is in our plant and what are they doing? Because steel is an inherent hazardous industry. We are always concerned about fatalities and safety. Fatalities is a concern, safety of our people. So this workforce of 70,000, 90,000 people who are in a real time at any point in our plants, where are they? Are they safe? Are they getting into an hazardous location? How do we find that out? There was no answer. So that started with a question. So that question, then what we did, a lot of panelists talked about, we had the RFID for an identification at the gate, fair enough. We said RFID is an isolated thing. Let us create a Suraksha card. So we geofenced our entire company with LoRaWAN. We use LoRaWAN because of the penetration through metal barriers. We required a low frequency signal to penetrate to the metal barriers. That was a practical challenge, and that was an innovation. So we geofenced the entire company with beacons using the LoRaWAN technology. And we gave every individual, the workers, a Suraksha card, which will continuously, every 2 seconds, it gives you a real-time tracking. It sends the data onto the cloud, right? And we know exactly where the person is. Then we said that, is that enough? If I carry somebody else's RFID, it is possible, but you have to also take care of those. So we introduced the biometric. Then we did a triangulation, right? And we named it a connected workforce platform. I think Shaival talked about connected, and I think Matthias also talked about connected. So the connected workforce platform became nothing but a vector product of RFID card at the perimeter, then a Suraksha card behind it, which continuously tracks you wherever you are, and then a biometric device that you are exactly at your work location or not, and it also stops the impersonification. You exactly know that, okay, I am the person who is carrying the RFID card. So we knew real time, near real time, every whereabout of an individual. Then we did a zone mapping across the company. That what is my hazardous zone, what is a safe zone, what is an unsafe zone, and what is an unproductive zone. Are you spending too much time in an unproductive zone that is just loitering around, right? So this was the starting point. And this connected workforce platform, we made a lot of upfront investment, as the point we have discussed multiple times, that we had a question, we made that investment. How is ROI coming? Okay, even if I can save 1%, if I can save one person's life through that, it is worth it. That is philosophical, that is one. Number two is that increase the safety index of the company multifold, right? Any incident if somebody falls sick, there is an SOS button in that card. If somebody is not feeling well, we can go and retrieve and all that. All those use cases came. Then COVID happened. Immediately, this platform got repurposed into real-time footfall management. And that is the point Matthias was making. The use case can start with 1 or 2, and then it will just proliferate because you have a platform, you have the data, right? And that data immediately told us, okay, now just integrate that with the Arogya Setu app. So we worked with the NIC database and integrated the Arogya Setu app, and we developed our own questionnaire. Have you traveled? Have you gone into a crowded place? Have you, all those simple questions we started, and we developed the questions. In that question, through that questionnaire, we created a red, amber, green status, as simple as that. So this platform was all the technology complexity inside and simplicity outside. What the platform gave is a real-time red, amber, green at the gate. And if you have traveled, if you have symptoms, cough, fever, all that, you are at red risk and you should not come at workplace. We could do it real time at the gate. If you are green, you can come in. If you are amber, then intervention has to be provided. That means you go for medical treatment, quarantine yourself, and all that. It started like that. Then, as Saibal mentioned, we also started AI on the same platform with the data to find distance between two people. Are they violating social distance? Are they following COVID appropriate behavior or not? Is there crowding happening at a certain place? Are too many people going to the canteen to eat at the same time? Are we maintaining social distance? Everything. It just proliferated use case after use case, and still date. Even containment zone analysis. When police will declare a certain place as containment zone, we know this workforce will not be available tomorrow. So our production planning, workforce planning can happen that way. So I can go on and on this platform, but this platform has become a bedrock of the real-time footfall management on a national asset. Steel is a continuous process. We cannot stop it, right? So during the core of COVID, in the peak time, we could manage the entire footfall through this platform. Point number two, as somebody mentioned about connected assets, there is another platform. We call it a maintenance technology roadmap. Through the sensors that the OEM has, or the sensors, the smart sensors that we bought, right? We can do the machine-to-machine communication and find out the health of a particular equipment real time to drive predictability and reliability. And that's a fantastic use case because every system going down, we have to take a shutdown. Either it is a breakdown or a planned shutdown, but the production is stopped. So if we can say that this machine can continue for another 6 months, we don't need to overhaul, or this machine we have to take down right now to do maintenance, we can actually optimize the production uptime and thus improve the realization, right? So that is how the use cases come in. Now we also sell still online. We have our own Ashiana platform, which is an individual home builder platform. So we actually give an Amazon-like experience to the customer that if you want to build your own house, what all materials you will need, this is one place, one-stop shop. And we can then cross-sell across the group. If you build a house, you possibly will need AC, that is where Voltas comes in. You possibly will need insurance, that is where AIG comes in. So we can do all that stuff, right? And then you go into use cases like the analytics models that you talked about, the 860 models and all that. It is all on data. As you take from vibration analysis to temperature analysis to yield, energy, throughput, quality, we are addressing each and every aspect of it through digital twins. There are many digital twins. We could move the entire work from on-site to off-site. Today, a coke oven can be actually managed from the iPad or the laptop. Possible. Okay. We are also trying to see, can we move or actually do monitor steel operations or manufacturing operations from outside of works, never heard of in the steel industry. So if you have data, what you are actually doing, you're not touching steel. It is a molten metal. You cannot go near that. What you're actually visually seeing with your naked eye is nothing but collecting data. If a camera can do it, if a sensor can do it, and you can analyze the data to create that particular use case, that's it. So connectivity is important. Data collection is important. Then comes the data analytics, the data visualization, and the AI, right? So that's the whole story, and we can go on and on the use case and on the platforms. But the point is that we have to invest upfront and realize the ROI with conviction, because if you ask too many questions, you will not move. You will have to have the conviction, sound faith, leap in faith, as they call it. Make the investments, the ROI will definitely happen, because digital is the way to go across industry, across the spectrum. So that's my view.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that use case. In fact, that's quite impressive. As you described one use case from end to end, and how it started with something, and as we saw, it evolves because you just start keeping on adding more ideas to it, and it becomes much more powerful. And possibly where it is today, it would not have been envisioned maybe 1 year ago or 2 years ago when you implemented that. But because you had that, you could quickly take off. So which is the other element of digital factory and smart manufacturing solutions. Once you start investing in the baseline use cases, you are actually quite better off as compared to those who don't, because the effects actually compound. And maybe after 3 years or 5 years, those who actually invest versus those who don't, there is a substantial difference between the two. And the other
and also, Sushant, just on that point, not to belabor the point, is the demography is very important, because not everybody will have a smartphone, not everybody will be able to invest in personal technology. So today's technology, the other objective that we should have in nation building is that create technology investments as much as possible so that we can reach out to the underprivileged and give them a better ecosystem, right? And that actually helped the workforce in Tata Steel to, without they investing, we invested, and they became safer. They became more productive, right? So that's the other point. Yeah.
Perfect. This has been a wonderful conversation. For the next segment, essentially, we'll have a couple of questions. These are open questions. Anyone in the panel can answer and build upon that, because I thought that these are important points to be covered as well. So the first theme is, we all spoke about the value side of digital factory, saying there is a value being created in terms of dollars, in terms of saving lives, in terms of efficiency, in terms of innovation. But as you're putting those hundreds of thousands of machines online, there's a machine-to-machine communication happening, there are AGVs running, and so on and so forth. It also exposes the organization to a wider cyber canopy, cyber risk canopy. So the question that I had is that when organizations are charting out their course on the value side, what should they be thinking from the risk and cyber perspective?
So I can take that because that's one of my very closest to my heart kind of a question. As I said in the beginning, that we took a strategic decision to invest in network, connectivity, cloud, and cybersecurity. And when I said cybersecurity, not only on the IT side, more important is on the OT side, because most of the times we neglect the OT side because the risk is much higher as you go to the process level. L3 to L2 to L1 to L0, as you move towards L0, the risk is much higher, right? So cybersecurity investment has to be really done upfront, right? Whether it is a data leak prevention, whether it is a advanced threat protection, whether it is to create the threat intelligence for your organization and being proactive. There is a lot of AI technology available today, but it seems like buying an insurance. People don't want to buy an insurance because they feel that okay, it's too much of a premium, and what is the benefit? It is exactly like that. You have to buy it because when it happens, it can erode your entire lifetime value, right? And that is the whole point. And that can one incident, it can happen in milliseconds. So every organization is susceptible to cyber attack today, right? And if you have those technologies, you will never regret. So that's the way.
Yeah. Any other panelist who wants to add perspective to that?
I think as a service provider, what we have is, in fact, we have created a lot of synergies because primarily we were into telecom, which is connectivity. But beyond connectivity, cybersecurity is the normal gradient which is there. And with digitization of the factories, cybersecurity is most important, which is going to be definitely, all of a sudden, your factories might come to a complete grinding halt because of a malicious attack, because of vulnerable attacks, all that stuff. So in fact, what we've created, we've got an AML based SOC. No, so just to be identifying, in fact, the threats as such in all can be taken care of. And that is the what we actually have done is with this, obviously with DLP solutions available, ATP solutions available, the positioning is such a manner that in fact it's a solution which is right from connectivity to cybersecurity to the edge cloud, everything all put together as such there. So, and even in the cloud, when we get into a cloud, now somebody wants to have a digital twin, it has to be on the cloud. There has to be a cybersecurity prevention there also, because that is also very, very important. So all these particular parameters are available. Definitely what Joyanta talked about, technology is not a problem at all. Technology is all available and it is nobody's patent anymore. It is only, how do you deploy it? How do you make things happen? And what do you get the best draw out of it? And the most important thing, I think, again, what Mr. Dandapani also touched upon, the legacy, the marriage of legacy to smart. How do we do that? I think that's the jigsaw puzzle. The legacy to marriage, this marriage, if we do it well, and there is no, I would not say there is a picture perfect solution to it, but definitely there are experts like Mr. Dandapani and Mr. Banerjee, Joyanta, in fact, who have actually, cracked it, and perhaps the industry needs to learn from them. And cybersecurity is definitely very, very integral ingredient of this entire stuff. Because at the end of the day, the entire production floor can come to a complete grinding halt if this particular thing is not taken into cognizance.
Can
just from the organizational point of view, one thing I would like to add on that one, cybersecurity is very much essential and it can create a lot of threats and other things are one thing. The organizationally, if you look at it, the IT guys who has been only to the data centers and in the ivory towers, now they have been moved to the shop floor today. Now the era is that where the IT guys have started palming their grease palm in their palms, and also the security guys are also in the shop floor to see whether the things are all put in right spirit. That is one largest transformation which has taken place, and that need to happen systematically such that everything can be put in order.
All good points. I just want to add another perspective. I mean, technically, protect us against cyber threats, that's one thing, but we also need to consider the data, how we structure data, because the end game for us is to democratize data, to solve problems where we previously saw no correlations. Machines can, give them to us to solve new problems by combining data. I mean, that's part of the story, right? However, we need to structure data, make sure what is, master data, where are the key repositories of data, who can actually access the data, and how will, law come into this. In Europe, we have the GDPR, the protection against how data can be used, where we need to predefine how we use data for future reasons. So, adding all these to a mix, if we have a threat, how will that impact? What data do we have? I think we need to, that's a lessons, maybe not lessons learned, but that's data management has gone to a new dimension by doing this. That's also a way that we, from the inside of companies, need to protect ourselves. So it's not only about the technical risks that we have, it's also what we actually put up there as terms, saving data, basically.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Quite engaging conversation. Maybe just one last question to each of the panelists, 30 seconds each, rapid fire, maybe one sentence each. So essentially, if we have a lot of people watching this today, and some of them would be in early stages of their journey from a digital factory or a smart factory solutions perspective, some might be more mature. But if there was one takeaway or one advice that you would have for them, what would that be? So we can start off in one sentence or a couple of sentences. What is that advice that you want to share with the audience today? Maybe we'll start with you, Matthias.
But I mean, don't invest in your road, in your platform, and then give it a try. It will pay off. You don't need to have a 5-year plan doing that to look for the magic golden case. Invest in the platform.
Perfect. Invest in the platform and the magic will happen.
Yeah.
Mr. Roy, your thoughts on this?
I would say the old English proverb says, Rome was not built in a day. Take that first step. It will happen.
Be bold, take the step. Perfect. Thank you. Mr. Banerjee?
Yeah, make digital boardroom agenda, or it has to be top down, because unless business leaders are involved, adoption will not happen, ROI will not come. So it's very important to treat digital as a business case and then go forward.
Digital as a business case. So solve for the business problem, the technology will take care of itself.
Yeah, technology will take care of itself. It will continuously evolve and it will fructify.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Thandapani?
Yeah, CFO's expectation on return on investment can be easily achieved by automation and process control. But using the data for furtherance will really bring the breakthrough benefit. That is the board subject.
Perfect. Focus on the data. That's the heart of things.
Yeah.
Other things are just technology which keep on changing.
Gold mine is there. Gold mine is there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfect. I think these are all quite insightful advice that you had shared with the audience here today. I personally enjoyed the conversation, and as you could see, I was frantically taking notes. This is pretty much worth the gold. It's insights of one of the industry leaders here. So we covered fair ground today in terms of saying that this is an opportunity which is across all, not limited to only one industry, even though we covered just a couple of industries more in detail. And we heard Matthias talk about, I like that terminology, saying drink your own champagne, get it done in your own house first. And he spoke about how Ericsson is implementing that in a smart factory in the US. And that's like a lighthouse case study, which was quite important. We then moved on from there and we said that, when we look at the use cases, it's obviously long-term play. For what was there for Tata Steel started in 2015, and then a substantial value on the table. So for those who are still sitting on the fence, I think this is something which should clear your doubts. Get on board. This train is leaving in that sense, right? So that was quite useful. And the other key takeaway was build the roads first, build the infrastructure which will make your technology come alive. We then spoke about saying innovation, and we saw that innovation happening across industries on AGVs, in terms of machine-to-machine communication and so on and so forth. And the key theme which came from there was around scalable platforms. So put in a platform which can scale with you, because you can't envision where the use cases will go from there. And when we spoke about people, I think very important point Mr. Banerjee came, you highlighted is, and also Mr. Dhundapani, that it's about the people on the other side, which is equally important. So if it is millennials, you chart out your course differently. And if it is, I would say, more conventional, then you chart out your play differently. But end of the day, you have to take everyone together. And finally, the entire panel pretty much agreed on the importance of cybersecurity, considering we are putting so much of value on digital, and that value also has to be protected. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation today. I would like to thank each one of you for sparing your time and coming here and talking to us today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sushant. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, everybody.